Hi, everyone. Welcome to Living Your Best Life with Eddie Stone, founder and CEO of Touchstone Essentials. Hello, Eddie.
Hi, Pari. How are you? So nice to be with you this evening or your morning. And
Yes.
hello to the fine folks that have decided to sit down with us for a few minutes tonight.
Yeah, great to have you here. It's been a long time. How
Too
is
long.
everything? Yeah, how is everything over there, the situation?
You know, we still in the U.S. We're still battling issues related to COVID-19, but it's better than it was, right? So that's a very positive thing.
Yeah.
The economy's coming back a little bit, and where I live in North Carolina, we woke up this morning and the air was just a little bit cool. And so, it's been hot and humid for many months now, kind of like, you experience in Thailand. And even this evening when I took the dog out, before we were going to have our show here, I noticed, oh my, I can kind of feel some fall in the air. So it's nice. I got kind of excited about the change of seasons that started.
Okay, it's great. The weather here is nice too. Maybe sometimes some days raining, but it's okay. Overall, it's okay. So today,
Right.
what are you going to share with us? The health tips, please, Eddie.
Yeah. So what we want to talk about today, and this is, going to pull together many elements of the things we've talked about over the past several months, particularly as we thought about the concept of healthy eating and the role that plays in immune health and lung health, right? Respiratory health, things like that, particularly as we worry about things like COVID, is healthy eating being about more than just what's on your plate, right? There's implications to this. And so I'll kind of give you a couple of things to think about. When people decide they want to change some habits and become more healthy, right? And people kind of come to it at different stages of life, or maybe not at all, right? There are some people that just never becomes important to them. But when it becomes important to them, in general, there are four reasons, right? And the first one is, and I think this is the most sort of startling, is perhaps fear.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the doctor, and they get diagnosed with high cholesterol or blood sugar problems, and they get told they're going to have to be taking blood sugar medications or type 2 diabetic, or they get told they're headed towards a heart attack, or they need to have bypass surgery, or if they don't stop drinking, their liver is going to fail, or they've got cancer. It's not so bad, but they need to get treatment and stop smoking and change their habits. So fear of death. Now, there are people that hear these things and they don't change. So that's not a motivator for everyone. Everybody doesn't have the same excitement about life and sort of see the view the same way. And none of what I'm saying is meant to be judgmental. It's just a recognition, though, that fear is a very startling sort of wake-up call for a lot of people. Another one, and it isn't as startling, and I have to say it's probably not across the board, not as many people are motivated, but it's by unhappiness with how somebody feels, sort of their well-being. At some point for people, they get sick and tired of being sick and tired. They get tired of being exhausted all day, getting a poor night's sleep. And so they're unhappy with their condition, and they think to themselves, you know what, I got to make some changes so my life is different, so the quality of my life is better. So quality of life, lack of quality of life can be a motivating factor in the same way fear is, but let's be real, probably not as many people are motivated by quality of life. Now, I have a theory about that. I'm about to be 57 years old in a couple days.
Happy birthday to you.
Yeah, thank you. And it's difficult for me I feel pretty good, but I know I've got some aches and pains. But it's difficult for me to remember what I felt like when I was 18. I remember it fondly. I can recall some of my actions and things like that, but how did I feel in the morning? I feel like I was probably just fairly energetic. I woke up, had a long day like kids do, went to bed. I probably could eat almost anything I wanted to without having problems, from it. And so I think as people get older, we forget how good we have felt in the past and how if we got ourselves back into a better condition, how good we could feel again. And so the longer we're removed from that feeling, I think the less motivating it is. We sort of forget, that's what it's like to get a good night's sleep. So fear, wellness or well-being, being unhappy with that. A third factor, and this is more motivating than people give it credit, is vanity. People can be motivated by how they look when they look in the mirror. Oh, I don't like what I look like. Or they're getting ready for a wedding, or to go to a wedding, or to go to a reunion, or to go whatever it happens to be. And they're like, man, I need to lose some weight, or I need to buy some new clothes, or get my hair cut, or whatever it happens to be. And vanity can drive people to work on their fitness and control their weight. And so it's a real motivating factor. And then a fourth one, and I think this is more motivating than people give it credit, is community, where we think about our example, maybe to our kids, maybe we're a teacher and how it affects our kids. And so community and how we affect the community. I know a lot of people that in their younger years, they were smokers, but then as they had children, they decided they shouldn't do that. And it was less motivated about their own health concerns than the example they wanted to set for their children. Or they didn't want to smoke in the house with their children. So community can be an important factor. And there are probably some other subtle things, but fear, sort of well-being, how you feel, vanity, community, these are big things. But when you jump on this healthy train, right? And for most people, it's sort of, there's something that happens. They're like, today's the day. I'm gonna do a better job today. But when you jump on that healthy train, there's a tendency to only think about yourself and the food you're going to buy and what's sitting on your plate and what you're going to eat. And what I think is instructive is if people will work to give themselves some education to expand their point of view. So instead of these decisions they're making only being about the food they're eating and how it may impact their waistline, their blood sugar levels, or their cholesterol, is to think about the bigger picture in the types of foods that you're buying, because what you spend your money on is what gets created and pushed back into the marketplace. You know, if we say to ourselves, there's too many snack foods, or if we say to ourselves, there's too many processed foods that aren't really good for people, well, the companies that make those things only make them because they're profitable and people want to buy them. And so I'm a big believer that as consumers, we need to take some ownership of our decision making and consider the broader implications of it. Now, you could argue that some of the sexy commercials for sodas and the addictiveness of sugar can make you become a repeat drinker of Diet Pepsis or Cokes or whatever it happens to be. But consider your dollars. If you don't spend those dollars, they don't make those drinks, right? And so on today's sort of primary topic, thinking about motivations, and here's what I would love to have happen, Pari. I would love to have people that are listening to this, that they're working hard to get better and more healthy, and sometimes they lose their motivations. What I want them to do is to broaden their perspective so that their motivations aren't just personal, they're external, and they're about the community. I'm a big believer that if I do something for more than myself, I do it more effectively, right? If I'm also considering it as it impacts my children, my wife, my mom and dad, my neighbors, these are things that can enhance my motivation, right? So when I get tired and it's not just about me now, it's about other people, I'll have some strength that I didn't have before. In the military, they teach men and women in risky situations to think of things like a band of brothers or a band of sisters. And you might fight harder to save the life of the person next to you than even your own life. And this can translate into decisions that we're making on a daily basis. And so I'll give you some idea about myself. And I want folks to know is all these things I'm talking about do not happen overnight, but you've got to stay on a steady arc, a steady track to get there. So for myself, there are two primary motivations in my world. The first one was I saw my mom become ill, really an unidentified sort of illness for a couple of years. Long story short, when we finally figured it out, she had had breast implants years before, and they were leaking, and her body was having a reaction, and she was becoming toxic to the implants in her body, and it went undiagnosed. And so it wasn't until a doctor suggested a chelation therapy, basically using something to bind the toxins in her body and take them out, that her health got better. Then she had some surgery to remove the implants and think about her diet and exercise. And so she's still a pretty healthy 70-some-year-old woman today. And she's only 17 years older than me. So my mom and I were pretty, she had me very young. And so that was, to me, sort of this wake-up call about, wow, you don't think about sometimes all these things that can affect your health in almost an invisible way. And then the second was, as that's happening, I'm in my late 20s. I was pretty fit when I was in college, at university. I did some recreational triathlons, right? So I'm pretty reasonably fit. But when I got to working, got married, started a family, I wasn't exercising. I was just working or trying to be with the family. And next thing you know, I'm overweight. And I've got high cholesterol. And my blood sugars are creeping up, right? And so I'm in my late 20s, early 30s, and I'm about to become a statistic. In the United States, there's a lot of men that in their late 20s and early 30s, they start to become the statistic of people that are having to take medications to control blood pressure or blood sugar, and their weight's causing a higher risk of a heart attack, even cancer. And so I just sort of had this sort of realization, man, I'm about to become this number I don't want to be. And so I had fear, fear of disease. I also wasn't happy with myself, and I had some vanity, right? I could look in the mirror and say, oh, I used to be a trim guy. I used to have a 33 waist, and now I have a 36. All these sort of things adding up in your head. And so I had some vanity, but also I did care about the example I was to the things I was doing. So those were my motivations. But the journey really took hold for me when I began to think about things in a broader sense. And so this was back in the 1990 for me. And it wasn't overnight. I'll confess to everybody listening to us, it easily took me 10 years to really sort of get things figured out. And like a lot of people, I'd make a couple steps forward and one back, and a couple steps forward and one back. But I kept my eye on the prize. I wanted to develop habits I could live with and I'd be happy with, and change my desire for sugar and fast food and things like that. And so I weaned myself off over time. But at the same time, I'm making those choices and starting to shift from buying conventional fruits and vegetables to buying organic. Here's a bigger picture that's very motivating. When you buy something that's organic, it isn't just the company that sold it to you. It's the community that grew it. It's the farmer and the farm workers that worked on a farm that was free of petroleum-based pesticides and other ingredients we don't want in our food that don't qualify as organic. It's the runoff from the farm field into the stream, into the local community. It's the air, the soil, and the water. It's even the animals on and around the farm, right? And so if you get yourself to thinking that there's a bigger picture when you think about organic, right, then your motivation to do it may be more. We're members of the Organic Trade Association, and so we get a pretty good education in this. Here's some things you have to be really careful about. One is sugar. A lot of sugar is produced from sugar beets that have been genetically modified so that they are pest resistant and basically chemical resistant, so they can be sprayed by things like glyphosate. And so the problem is, without a lot of long-term research, humans are eating genetically modified sugar beets in the form of very refined sugars, but the communities that that's grown in, they're overspraying with glyphosate and other herbicides, pesticides, and fungicides, and so it's in the water, and the farm workers associated with those foods are exposed to it, and the farmer, and the farmer's family, and the community, and everybody around it. And so when we empower with our money that conventionally produced sugar, when we buy those sugary energy drinks and soft drinks and all this consumption of sugar, particularly in the West, I don't think it's quite as bad in the East, but particularly in the West, you're empowering that genetically modified industry and conventional production of crops that has damaging impact beyond just the food on your plate. So reducing your intake of sugar has a bigger implication than just reducing your intake of sugar. So something to consider, right? Soybeans and soybean products are basically found in everything, from clothing to paint to food to packaging. And soy production is so pervasive that it keeps farmers from having diverse crops, the ability to rotate that crops on their farms and create biodiversity that's good in general for the soil and everything around there. Because there's so much cheap, genetically modified soy grown all over the world. And so it's not just that excess amount of soy can be hormonally negative for human beings. You know, I can start to grow breasts and you can start to grow whiskers on your face, right? I mean, these are things neither of us are really looking for, right? It's also the impact of that genetically modified material, again, with the overspray of the herbicides, fungicides, pesticides, getting into the waterways, essentially preventing biodiversity in ways that are harmful, not just today, but for generations to come. So again, it's more than what's on your plate, right? When you're saying no to ultra-processed, conventionally grown foods, you're saying no to the practices, right? So sugar's a bad one, soy products, even chocolate. So let's just take chocolate, right? We all love chocolate in some way. Yeah, right? And it's, I'd say if there's a food that's addictive, chocolate can feel like it's pretty addictive, right? You have a bite, you don't want to put it down. When you're buying conventional chocolate candies, those are generally grown in plantations in Western Africa and other really underdeveloped parts of the world where child labor is literally used to harvest the cacao that eventually becomes the chocolate. So you've got child labor issues, child enslavement is really what it amounts to, and a population that's kind of growing that chocolate, preparing it for market, that aren't benefiting from the riches of the companies that own those chocolate or cacao plantations. So again, if you have the chance to buy a chocolate bar that says fair trade, right now your dollars, you're still going to get a delicious chocolate, but your dollars are supporting a different agenda on the ground for the people involved in the production of crops. So just like I know for you, Pari, you care about animal rights, right? And you're concerned about the excess consumption of animal protein, not only for the health implications, but you know, you're concerned about all those farm animals, right? Those same things can be motivated for healthy decisions, just like they can be motivated to say, you know what, I want chocolate. I'm not going to eat too much chocolate. And I'm going to buy a chocolate that I think is supporting the values that I believe in. And that's also a motivation in how you're making these decisions. You may not care as much about the health as that, hey, I want my dollars to support the values. And we can carry this on to corn. Unfortunately, genetically modified corn, because of the way those crops are treated and how they're around large riverways, quite frankly, they can almost destroy river systems. The Mississippi, the mighty Mississippi in the United States deals with hypalox, which is this overgrowth of algae from all of the oxygen being taken out of the water from all of the fertilizers utilized on corn and other products that's floating downstream. And you know, we can talk about processed meats and the use of nitrates and that kind of farm production of meats and farm animals and cruelties associated with that, and the increased risk of colorectal cancer for men that have excess amounts of processed meats in their diet. But just also thinking about, you know, people joke about a free-range chicken, but a free-range chicken is a whole different impact on the ground and on the farm and on the waste and on the run out than factory farm chickens that are just, you know, never essentially leave a little box for its 70 days of its life. I don't even think it's 70 days anymore. I think a hog is now 70 days in a mass production. They can get broiler chickens in like 46 days. So these things are, you know, they're issues of health. If you can clean up your diet, will impact your health, but it also has a broader implication. And so I just wanted to introduce this idea tonight to think about motivations, and then stretch that to think about the decisions that you're making. And I'm not trying to impose my values on anybody, But just know that one way or the other, the decision you make when you buy food and you eat food is an expression of your values. It is that the concept of things like organic are really not important to you, and that's okay. I'm not value judging that. Or spending that money to do that and making that effort is an expression of your values. And the more your values can be aligned with your food choices, the more motivated you are to be healthy, the more likely you are to follow through. And however long your journey is, 10 years or whatever, you finish in a place that you feel good about. You learn some habits you can stick with and that you enjoy. So I guess that's a lot to say, right? And maybe a little bit of a heavy subject, but being healthy is more than just how you choose the food that's on your plate. There's more to it.
You say it all, Eddie. I have nothing to ask actually. But for those, Eddie, I know what you said is all correct. For people, I mean, when we decide to eat something, maybe we should find a story, to keep us healthy as well, But some people, they don't have any story that for them to be aware of. What should they do with these people? Eddie, what do you recommend?
Well, so I think that's a good thing to think about, right? So it's important to read and try to learn. You can easily Google and look around. You can, on a Sunday, if you live in a city, go out to a farm, go to a farmer's market, and don't just buy something, talk to the farmer. Ride around and look at the area. Think about where your food comes from. In a modern world, we don't really have to think about it, right? Heck, we can do an app on our phone and they'll deliver it to our door. We don't even have to go to the grocery store anymore. And so we've become removed from knowledge about the work and the production of food and what all goes into it, is involved with it. And so the more you can connect to it, the better. I'll suggest a book. It's a great book, but maybe it's a little too big a book, but it's called An Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan. And it's a great book. It traces food from seed to table, right? You learn about the whole process. He's got several books. One is called In Defense of Food. There's a book called Tomatoland that talks about tomatoes and kind of eye-opening about the near mafia-esque environment involved in the production of tomatoes in Florida, right? We forget sometimes, if you look at sugar cane and beet production in Florida and the labor strife and things involved. So it's there. You got to ask the questions and you got to poke around, but it's there. Mm-hmm. And if people choose to, then educate themselves. And again, you can start on our website. There are two things I'll say about the website. One is Pari's we'll have a link in the show. Click her link and you can go there. If you get on the community tab, you can go to our blog and wonderful articles about things like the fire, smoke, and impacts in California right now, some of the other weather events around the globe, these foods, conventional farming versus organic, lots of things there. And so educate yourself, right? That's the best way to start owning your motivations, is to educate yourself about what's going on. And one more thing to mention, Pari, I've had some people say something about they hear that we have gift cards. And so for those that don't know, Pari has gift cards that she can share with you if you are a first-time purchaser. So if you'll DM her, Pari, maybe you can tell them how to get hold of it. But if you DM her, she has a $50 gift card. She's got a pretty good supply for anybody that would like to try our products. That's a first-time customer. She'd be happy to share those with you.
Mm-hmm. Just email me. That is my email under this video. That's it. Uh-huh. And you have many good products, and besides that, it's all organic, right?
That's right. Yeah, we're proud of that. And we are conscious to, there's not perfect situations, but we can get really close in how we think about the wages and the farming practices and things. And our goal is constantly strive to do better, mm-hmm. right? And if we all sort of have this attitude personally and professionally, no telling what we can accomplish, right? And I'm a big believer that it's difficult to remain static. And so you got to keep your eyes sort of pointing forward if you want to get better and see quality of life improve, not just for you, but for your family and those around you.
And Eddie, what you were saying is very good, because I haven't thought of that too. Like the money that we spend on food, buying something, we don't know like this money can support or can impact the environment too, that, I think is
Yeah.
a very good point, you know.
I'm fortunate that one of the grocery stores near where we live, it's called a Whole Food Market, lots of them in the US. One of the things there is that you can actually see when you're choosing potatoes or tomatoes or whatever it is, you can see if it was available, it came from a local farm. And anytime we can, my family, we try to buy locally, right? We save transportation, exhaust and emissions and things like that, but keeps the money in our community, right? And all of us have those choices if we buy at farmers markets or do those things. If you're buying conventional processed, ultra processed packaged food, you have no ability to impact that. And for me, I just like the concept and the idea of a small family farm or even a big family farm. You know, my dollar's playing a role. It's important, like voting's important, right? Everybody gets a vote, right? And you want that vote to count. Your dollars have an effect in kind of the same way. You're kind of voting with your dollars.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Eddie, thank you so much for being here with us tonight,
Thank
for
you,
your
Pari.
time. So
Look forward to it next time.
yeah, we see you again next time. Okay.
Thank you.
Bye.